Alright, so now that we have our images saved from the CBCT, we can take them and open them in the DicomAnalyzer software. With that, we're going to basically draw our lines on the lateral. There's not much to draw. You can hit the S-line button, zoom in with your mouse wheel, and get down to where you can pick that line across the anterior third, which extends out and shows you what angle you would shoot your nasium at. We get into more interesting territories if we're looking at the vertex. We can hit our rotational component, can zoom in here and get to where we're marking the circle there. These unfortunately are fairly low resolution. There may be a way to increase the resolution that we're getting off of them, but for what we need right now, it's good enough to be able to see the points. And so what you'll notice is it works off of the newer analysis, where it finds the angle and then does the bisecting line. Got 4 degrees of rotation there. If you're not happy with where that central ray is at, or you're not happy that it's hitting the center of your dens, you are able to accommodate for that by using the Atlas Planeline tool. And what I would do then is I would pick the middle of the two circles, and just mark an Atlas Planeline there, through that. And then you can mark from the center of your atlas, which is where that bisecting line is, and you can drag that up and through the cribriform plate, the central part of the nose, everything else. And then when you come back to your nasium view, you're able to see that the atlas and axis are converging by 86.4 degrees on the left, which means on the left you'd be posterior by 3.6 degrees, or on the right you're anterior by 3.6. If we go back to what we did for the vertex, basically I had 4 degrees there. These two lines aren't exactly perfectly parallel, so the chances are that it's shot very nicely and that we can use the original. The line here that comes down the center is actually a bisecting line of the entire image, and so it's not necessarily going to be perfectly down the center of your structures. Now finally, as we go to what we've got for a nasium, obviously we're missing some of the anatomy because we could cut it out and we didn't need it. When you come in here, we can pick your plane line, Atlas plane line, choose your bottom points of where your arch crosses the lateral mass, left and right. You can mark the upper portions, left and right again, right and left, doesn't matter. This tells you that your lines are converging by 0.2 degrees on the right, which means you're basically parallel. Then you can mark your lower angle points. Pick the point right over here. These are your body center points. And then we can find the C2, which is a little more difficult to pick out because of the low density that you've got on the atlas. Come down and look at this. We know it's going to be off to the right side. If we look here, we know that from there it's going to be slightly above the atlas, or above C2's body center point, so it should be right up here and off to the right. We come down and we can mark the new points that we use for the lateral edges of the transverse. You can pick the centers of the circles if you want. You can pick wherever you like. And then you can use your C/A tool. Trace one side, trace the other side, end up drawing a third point that matches those two, and then come up to where your joints are here. Create a circle that matches those, and finally you would use your central skull line. And with this you would just trace one edge of the skull. I usually start quite a bit lower than we would normally want to analyze, so I can see what the skull is doing as it comes up. And so if you pick the wrong points or end up with a line somewhere, you can just use backspace to back up, as long as you haven't finished drawing a line. Brightness and contrast you can mess with by using your right mouse wheel, or right mouse button, and dragging up and down, left and right. Panning happens with your central button, with your central mouse wheel. If you click it down and move the image, then you can pan around. So basically all your controls are on your mouse at any given time. I usually mark quite a bit past where I would actually want to analyze as well. You can double click your last point. And we carry over here, and we do the same thing on the opposite side. And this is really the part where you want to be careful and do it properly. Here's where if we had a little bit higher quality of image in terms of pixel density, it would be a little cleaner. And you get that generally off of the full dicoms. But this should get us right in the ballpark of what we want to see. And these points here can be as close or as far apart as you want. Usually just get them to where I can find it most accurately hits the edge of the skull. And as you come out, we don't have a cephalometer tool that overlays because that does math and the computer's good at doing math. So instead you have two parallel lines that are about 1/4 inch apart. They identify the range of the skull you're looking at. There's a perpendicular blue line in the middle that shows where the center of your tool would be if you were to just lay it down there. And then there's a dynamic red line that you can see moves as I go up and down, and that shows what the skull is doing at any given point. So in this situation, we're going to tilt this so that the blue line and the red line kind of overlap, get us into the ballpark. You can also look at where that crosses the atlas, and if we know that the atlas should be kind of on center, we can get to where we hit the ballpark there. And then once we hit a point, we can just hit the space bar to lock in. So we're not changing the angle anymore. The angle is changed with the left and right arrows. You just pick the bottom range and the upper range of what you want to analyze. So that kind of kicks over there a bit. We could use a really narrow range here and just use like that. You can go back and redo it. Use the same edges of the skull. You can have the computer do a double pivot point across the entire skull. So you can go right bottom to top and just see what it does there. And you can pick different ranges that you want to look at. So depending on what is reliable, what's consistent, and then if you want to go back and forth and look at the different ones you've drawn, you can hit Control Z to go back, and Control Y goes forward again. Those are just standard Windows errors. Windows commands. So I think I like that first one the best. That gives us a line. You can see in your output box here, you've got all your numbers, everything. So it tells you your type 4 on the right, basically. 1.3 degree laterality, 0.8 degree head tilt, 2 degree lower angle, 1.5 degrees off to the right in the lower neck. You can combine that with your rotational components. You can put these side by side if you just drag the tabs over. So you can put pre's and post right side by side. You can compare them, do whatever you want to do in terms of how you orient your images. But there we go. That's basically how you can do the analysis of CBCT images.